So let us start with our today's first session, Navigating the Generative AI Landscape. Dear participants, esteemed guests and other tech innovators, it's my privilege to introduce our chief guest, Mr. Karthik Ganapathy, Analytics Manager from Ford. With 19 years of expertise in data science, he is the Analytics Manager at Ford Motor Company, leading teams across diverse sectors. Passionate about education, Mr. Ganapathy mentors students and speakers at conclaves. Technically proficient, he excels in Python, SQL, R, machine learning, TensorFlow, Keras, and more. Currently, he spearheads initiatives at Ford using predictive models for warranty claims, NLP for customer feedback, and reducing employee attrition. In previous roles, Mr. Ganapathy significantly contributed to champion analytics, customer segmentation, risk models, and more. His educational journey includes a PGPM in finance, CFA Level 1 certification, and a bachelor's degree in computer science. Join me in extending a warm welcome to our distinguished chief guest, Mr. Ganapathy sir, as we eagerly await valuable insights from his wealth of experience in data science and analytics. Now, let us welcome Karthik sir for sharing his expertise on navigating the landscape of generative AI. Welcome you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thanks for that great introduction, and thanks to everyone here for having me on this webinar. So can I share my screen or? Okay.
Is it possible for you, sir? Yes, sir. It's visible.
Yeah, so is it visible?
It's visible. It's
Okay. Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining this webinar. So I will start with what is the agenda we have for at least from for my specific part. So I will start with the history of generative AI. Again, what is the key timelines and what are the key milestones we have crossed. We will look at what are the features of generative AI. So again, generative AI is a vast area, and we would like to my main goal here in the session would be to demystify some of it, touch upon some of the common terms that are used. Again, this is still evolving, as you know, it's a fast-growing field. So some of the terms we use today may not be used 6 months back, or it may be outdated. Uh, we'll also look at some of the trends that are emerging in generative AI. Look at some of the key terminologies, and specifically, I would also like to touch upon applications of Gen AI in specific industries, right? Specifically, I'll be touching upon banking, retail, and manufacturing on what are the use cases. And I will wind it up with a quick demo. So maybe not every one of you may have coded or used generative AI either as an API or other form. You may have used a ChatGPT like a console, but I would like just take a couple of examples to run you through how APIs are used to use generative AI. So before I start, I will start with a couple of interesting statistics. So about 75% of professionals expect Gen AI to cause a significant disruption in their industry, right? So this was in an article submitted by McKinsey, and again, that shows the kind of disruptions that are waiting to happen due to Gen AI, right? And this was a quote from Mr. Sam Altman. He is the CEO of OpenAI. And as you know, OpenAI is the one who released ChatGPT and is open sourcing many other models. There are about 100 million people who use ChatGPT on a weekly basis, right? So that is a pretty huge number. Again, that's to give you an idea, that's almost like the size of a social network, right? Having regular users weekly 100 million is that's to like 10 crore people, right, using this console every week. So that shows how people across different industries are using this. Okay, so now diving into generative AI, right? So again, this term has been used a lot. So what is it exactly? So it refers to the use of AI for creating content, right? For like image, text, music, audio, or video. So if you notice, all of these are somewhat human-like. So AI, why is it called artificial intelligence? Because it mimics some of the key some of the human traits that are being done, right? So, for example, if a person speaks, if a person reads, a person listens, right? So all of these, either text or if you use an image, if you use a audio, a video, etc. So all of these are human qualities. So that is being mimicked by AI and specifically generative AI, right? So this term has become extremely popular. It has become like a household name, mainly because of the release of what is called Chat GPT, right? So ever since the release of Chat GPT, I think this term has garnered a lot of attention from people in different industries. And one interesting thing that I noted is earlier it was AI was more related to academic things, like for example, how to classify an image, how to detect whether a mail is spam or not, right? So all these kind of data science, machine learning components we see every day. But this went one level higher and it started looking at creative fields. For example, can I write a poem? Right? How can I create an image? How can I create an image that does not even exist, right? An image of a person. So I will touch upon some of this in the next few slides. So that is the power of generative AI. It is the ability to create new content. And the keyword here is generative, right? So by generative, as you know, it generates content. It based on the learning from certain data in the past, it generates content in the future. And here is an example. Draw a picture of a cat. It can create a image on its own, right? You need not have to depend on someone take a photo. It can be created by AI. So what are some of the processes? So these are some foundational blocks I would like to cover. So what is the process in generative AI? The first step, of course, in any data science or machine learning task is collecting data. So in this case, we are collecting a lot of text data. So they call it corpus, text corpus, right? The vast amount of data, several billion records in number. And based on that, they do what is called as a pre-training. So pre-training is something like when you have a GPT-3 model, you may have heard it is released by OpenAI. So they pre-train on a vast amount of data. So you can think of it like a head and a body of a person, right? So pre-training is like the body of a person. It is more generic. So it is trained on vast amount of generic data on the internet. But the next step, as you see, fine tuning is more like the head of a person, right? So you can you can attach any type of head to a body. So fine tuning is required because you need to customize it to specific occasions. To give an example, right? If let's take an example of a bank. They are in the field of they are trying to build a chatbot for banking customers. So what they will do is they will take a pre-trained model and they will try to customize it to specific banking terminologies, right? Some terms are very specific to banks, and for example, a pharma company can have a very domain-specific term. Banks can have a domain-specific term. So it's customizing to that. And then we have the prompt, which is what we provide as an input. So generative AI mainly consists of a prompt, which you give as an input, and then you get the output content, right? Which is the text or image or video, anything like that. So that in short is like a life cycle of a Gen AI process. Yeah, so these are a couple of examples of generative AI. Many of you would have seen a lot of it. For example, this is the one at the top is a screenshot of Chat GPT. So what you see on the left, you get input prompts. You write any prompt, like say, create a particular text or a poem. Write a poem for me in say 500 words. And on the right, you get an output, right? A text that is generated through this engine called Chat GPT. The other one here is Mid Journey. So this is more like an image generation tool. So you can enter a text saying, look, create an image of a rabbit wearing a hat, right? And the output you get is an image of a rabbit, right? So these are across different types of content. So for the input is a text, the output is an image, right? So this is another specialty of generative models. They can move across different modes. So I would like to give a quick classification of what is generative and what is discriminative AI, right? Just generative versus discriminative, and how did this term really come? Generative, like I said earlier, it generates content. So it looks at the data from the past, learns from it, and it generates new content. So that content can be text, image, video, audio, anything, right? And specifically, this is what helps in Gen AI being more creative, helping in creative areas. So that is more on the generative side. So what is discriminative? Discriminative is when you want like typical classification task. We can take an example of a mail. So if you want to classify as a mail as a spam or not a spam, so we all use emails and we see get a lot of emails which are junk. So that's classified as spam or not spam. That's a good example of discriminative where you say, okay, should I make it as a spam or should I make it as a not spam? So it is more like a classification task. So this is a short history about AI. So again, there's been a lot of progress made in the last decade, 10 years or so. But I will cover it. So somewhere in the mid of 20th century, you had what is called a Turing test. So this was introduced by a person called Alan Turing. So this is to determine if a machine does it pass a Turing test. So what is a Turing test? If a machine can mimic a human being in intelligence, like I said, if a machine can write a poem, if a machine can write a story, right? So that is an example of intelligence that's shown by the machine. So this Turing test was proposed. You also had something called as the expert system. So expert system is rule-based system. Unlike AI system, which is more, it is derived from the data. So rule-based is you plug in the rules for that system for it to accomplish the required tasks. After that, you had what is called as machine learning algorithms. So as you know, there are a lot of machine learning algorithms, and you would have heard the terms machine learning and deep learning, right? So deep learning is a subset of machine learning, and some examples of machine learning algorithms are random forest, XGBoost, etc. And after that, if you see somewhere in around 2005, the cloud computing platforms like AWS, Amazon Web Service, Microsoft Azure, they all started coming into the market. So this was more like cloud computing platforms that were developed. But what is happening now is you see a lot of AI components which were not there earlier. So these are available as plug and play components in these cloud computing platforms. So like AWS, you have Google Cloud Platform, you have Azure. So all these companies have their cloud platforms which we can use to customize and build our own applications. And somewhere around in the last 3 years or so, we had OpenAI, so which is behind ChatGPT and releasing the GPT family of models. So it released GPT-3. And also somewhere around end of 22, you had ChatGPT, which created, it was a major breakthrough. And people all over the world, there was an explosion in people using AI tools. And finally, the word Gen AI, it becomes very popular. So just for the record, Gen AI existed even before ChatGPT. It was a term, but it became really popular with people across industries beginning to use that term. So what are some of the common tasks that can be done in Gen AI, right? So one is text summarization. For example, you can feed in, let's say you want to summarize a lesson, right, that you are teaching to your children. So you want to compress that into say 10 lines or so. It may run into 5 or 10 pages. So you can compress it into say 5 or 10 sentences, right? So that is a gist that you get. Rewriting. So rewriting is taking a content that is available and rewriting in a different form. For example, you can make the writing in a more legal terms. So legal terms are a little difficult to understand, and you can convert it into a more easy to understand form, like common people can understand. So similarly, information extractions. How can you use unstructured data like PDFs or images, extract data from it, like say the name, address, and other details from it. And question answering. Question answering, as you know, you may have a database of say documents, images, videos, etc. And how can you question it? For example, you can say, give me a list of passbooks that are available, right? Or what is the name of the customer who has account number so and so. So this is an example of something used in the banking industry. Classification. Classification, as I said earlier, do you want to classify an image? Do you want to classify a text? So if you want to say, does this image contain a bird? Yes or no, right? So that is an example of classification. The next one is translation. Translation, changing it from one language to another. You feed in English, you get the output in Spanish or Italian or Tamil or any other languages, right? So that's translation, which is also done. And finally, what is called as reasoning. So reasoning is when you ask a question, when you pose a certain question to the AI model. So you will ask it to explain it or reason. So whenever we discuss with a human, we will say, what is the reason, right? So you want to give a step-by-step way of how something is derived. So that is reasoning here. So these are some of the common tasks that's done using GenAI. Again, it's not restricted to this, but I only try to cover the most important ones. So transformer. So again, I took this up. Please uh, don't be surprised looking at this. It's a very involved topic, transformer. So I wanted to introduce here just to say that this is like a backbone of most of generative AI models, right? Or large language models. So what you can take away from this slide is transformer is it was introduced in a research paper in 2017, and it had a huge effect on the large language model. So how is it? It introduced something called as concepts like self-attention. It introduced multi-head attention, masked multi-head attention. So all of these were introduced. And so in simple words, what it means is it speeded up the process. So whenever a human speaks a certain sentence, you always have a context. So if you speak 5 sentences, the first sentence and the fourth sentence may be related. So that is called context, and that was derived very well by transformer. So this helped in a great way, and it was used in famous models like GPT, BERT, and other models, right? So that's why I wanted to show this to you. Again, if you are interested, you can read this paper on transformers. This available on the internet. It's like a building block of large language, most of the large language models. This is about evolution of models. Again, I wanted to touch upon this to show how fast things have evolved, right? So especially if you see in the last 10 years or so, somewhere from 2017 when transformers were introduced, you can see there's been a lot of progress, and now we are at a stage where you can interact with a system like ChatGPT, where everyday humans can interact, laypersons can interact and get whatever they want, right? So we started with RNN. So RNN is called a recurrent neural network. And this was something that they started with for language modeling or NLP tasks. And it was followed by LSTM. LSTM is long short-term memory, which improved upon the RNN or recurrent neural networks. But all of these had certain limitations, which was overcome by transformers. For example, context understanding, that was something that was provided by transformers in 2017, like I said. And following that, you had a lot of family of models like BERT. BERT was released by Google, GPT was released by OpenAI, and so on, right? So if you see most of these large language models, 2019 you had GPT-2, then you had Roberta, which is a variant of BERT, and you had Palm. Palm is released by Google. Llama was released by Facebook, right? So if you see some top 4 or 5 companies control most of these releases that are happening, right? These new open sourced models. So that's another interesting thing to note here. Yeah, so another term I want to introduce here is multimodal. So what does multimodal refer to? So it is refers to systems can understand across different forms of data. So I said there are forms of data like text, image, audio, video, etc. So how can a system understand different forms of data? So we have seen ChatGPT, which is text, it takes text as input and it outputs text, right? So input and output are both text. But can we enter a text as input and get an image as output? Or can we enter text and get a video? So what you see here is an example of a text input and an image output, right? So a dog looking in the mirror, seeing a cat, right? So that is the input that you give as prompt. But when you see the output is an image. So this is a classic example of a multimodal. So it spans text, image, audio, video, etc. So again, the reason I am introducing all of these are some common terms you will hear, and knowing this will definitely help you go through this journey. So what are some of the key trends in generative AI? So there's a lot of personalization that happens. So whenever you visit a specific website, you visit a specific shop nowadays, a lot of user data is collected, starting from mobile numbers to address to various other data, right? Your shopping patterns. So Gen AI helps in personalizing. Already a lot of that is being done by companies like Amazon, Netflix, Flipkart, etc. But this is only going to get more momentum as we go forward. Another trend is deepfake technology. You may have heard of this term. So what is deepfake? So it is generating content like image or audio which did not exist, but people manipulate it for some harmful purpose, right? So again, to give an example, recently our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he had shared that there was a video of him which was not authentic, which was not real, but someone created deepfake technology, deepfake image or video using AI. So that is again something to be careful about, and about which a lot of policies need to be derived. The next one is ethical use of Gen AI. So when you have deep fake, which is causing problems in society, you need something like an ethical policy on how to use AI. So how do you collect data? How do you ensure that there is privacy of customers, right? So that's on the ethics side. Improved accessibility and democratization. So again, ChatGPT is a classic example. As you see, this is like you can access AI through a browser. So all you need is you need to have an account with ChatGPT. Again, the basic version, it does not cost anything. But once you have that account, you can create content, right? You can generate text. Another example is Midjourney, which is about generating images. So all this has been democratized. Like I showed you, there are 100 million users every week using ChatGPT, right? That's one tool. And we are talking about a whole lot of other tools. And then finally, the AI generated content detection. So just like I said, deepfake technology, which creates content that's harmful, which did not exist. You also have something called content detection. So when you see a content, is there a way to detect whether is it fake or is it AI generated or is it real, right? So these are some areas or trends that are mainly evolving in this area. And this is something you can also read upon. There are several other trends, but I found these to be quite uh, interesting. So moving on to application of Gen AI in specific industries, right? So I'll start with banking industry. Again, as you know, banks, they store a lot of financial documents. So it could be your passbooks, it could be the ledger, it could be the customer detail, transactions. All these are stored in documents. So when you say document, it could be like a PDF file, a CSV data file, and so on. But how do you mine all of this in a very quick time frame? We already were using this data, but with Gen AI, a lot of it is being made much more easier to handle. So similarly, virtual assistants, right? Virtual assistant, think of chatbots, how customers reach out to banks and they chat with the customer service agent, right? So this can be automated as well using generative AI. Again, chatbots existed even more than a decade back, but with Gen AI tools, it's become much more easier to develop such virtual assistants. So capital markets research. So here I'm referring to cases where companies file a lot of documents like earnings report, annual report, balance sheets, etc. So if you want to get content or get data, extract data from those documents, that can be done using generative AI. So uh, that's something called document search, using which you can ask questions to the model and it will return you answers. And then personalized marketing. So whenever you receive emails from banks, right, you can see that it's mostly personalized to what you want. For example, you may be a high net worth individual, you may be earning a few million per year, let's say. In that case, they would target you with specific offers that very high net worth individuals only. For example, a credit card, which is not provided to everyone, but only HNI customers. But if you are a student who is, say, 18 years of age and you are having a bank account, so in that case, they would not share the credit card application with you because your profile and your wealth status will be completely different. So that's what I meant by personalized marketing. So this is one more area in retail, how GenAI is applied. Product recommendations. So you could think of like if you go to Walmart, right? What kind of products? Let's say you go to Amazon. Products are recommended based on your past search history, right? For example, you may have bought a mobile phone, you are offered new accessories on their website. So that is an example of product recommendation. And interactive customer product customization. So again, this is how do you generate images on the fly, right? Earlier, you needed a designer to sit and design each of these, but with GenAI, all of this can be customized much more easier. planograms. So planograms is something like a shop floor layout. For example, when you enter a retail store, you would have noticed that everything is arranged in a particular way. So, for example, the fruits, vegetables would be in a particular place, the groceries would be a particular place, and books will be a particular place, and so on, right? So that is all planned to ensure that uh, to ensure maximum sales for the particular retail company, right? So that again is being helped by Gen AI tools. So coming to the next field, manufacturing. So I will maybe touch upon a couple of use cases here. For example, training, right? Training is one of the key things that's required in manufacturing. Take, for example, a mobile manufacturer, right? Like Foxconn. That's a company that manufactures mobile phones. So training is one of the key things here for such kind of companies because they continuously recruit employees and they want to ensure that they are trained properly on their tasks, right? So this can be done by Gen AI. So a lot of training is virtual and Gen AI can help do that. Similarly, robotics and automation. So again, in manufacturing company, think of a car company, right? So you have parts being assembled, you have an assembly line and parts are being assembled on it. So a lot of it is repetitive. So again, that can be automated using generative AI. And finally, a couple of examples in our daily life, right? For example, GitHub Copilot. So I believe some of you here would have been developers or you may have written code. So GitHub Copilot is a very good example where developers benefit from Gen AI. So there are a lot of use cases, but one specific example is if you want to write a code in Python or you want to write a code in Java, you can use GitHub Copilot, you can describe what you want and it generates code for you. So again, that's an amazing feature that you see in Gen AI. Similarly, blogs and resume. A lot of people, you may be searching for job, writing resumes, or you may be writing blogs, right? So all of this you can, as you see here, right? You enter a particular text or paragraphs, and you can ask it to reword it in a more easy to understand form. So broadly, those were the areas that I wanted to cover. So any questions here?
So thank you, sir. That was really a wonderful session, and you gave us the roadmap or the pathway to look into the insights of GenAI. So with your permission, let me pose a few poll questions. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Can I stop sharing the video?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. So thank you, sir. Really, that was a provoking session, and you have given us the path or the roadmap which really the participants need. And with your permission, sir, we will go for two poll questions, and then we will be moving to the Q&A.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir. Participants, and let me put the poll link in the chat. Please take up the poll question, and after the poll question, we can go for the Q&A. Meanwhile, you can post your questions in the chat. The chat will be open now. I have shared the first poll question. So participants can take up the question. The recording will be shared. Yeah, almost most of you people are answered the first question. So let me share my second poll question. The second question is on live. You can take up the second question.
Now we are receiving the poll answers for the second question also. Okay, let me share my screen to show the answers of the poll question, and we will go a quick answer for the poll. Yeah, the first poll question is about what type of AI model is commonly used to generate synthetic images. We have been given with the option as GAN, CNN, SVM, and decision trees. So the correct answer is GAN because all of the models are used for classification or segmentation or for regression problems. So the first answer is for GAN. The second poll question, which has been posted, is about which field is not typically associated with the use of generative AI. So people have answered a combination of literature, art, music, and even data security. And in all the things like literature, art, and music, we could able to generate audio, text, and even audio images, so as discussed in the introduction. So which is not possible is in data security. So that is the right answer. So now we go on to the Q&A. So few questions we have received in the chat box, sir. We have picked up few questions, sir, for answering. So let us take the question like how Gen AI can impact software developers job and replacing humans on these kind of IT roles by Gen AI. So this is one question from the participants, sir.
Okay, yeah, that's a very commonly used asked question. So again, like I said, GenAI, the specialty is it has cut across industry, right? So earlier we were afraid that software developers or the people in working in IT are affected by automation. But with what we saw, some of the examples I gave, you can see that even people in creative field are getting affected. But to answer this question, right? So one common case where people are affected in developers are affected or IT employees are affected is like a GitHub Copilot. So how can you generate code using a Copilot? So they call it pair programming. So what it means is all you need is to give some description about what you want, some specific prompts, and you will get the code as output. But at the same time, while the code is generated, there also needs to be some kind of expertise needed in that particular technology, right? Like a person, it can sometimes the code may not be complete, sometimes the code may be incorrect. So just because you generative AI gave you the answer doesn't mean it's 100% correct. So you need a judgment from the developers as well. So again, that can't be automated. At least as of now, it's not foolproof. But I expect in the future it will be much more advanced in that way. But yeah, we need to still be good in the basics and be good at what programming languages we know, the developers. The basics need to be strong because, as I said, some of the content may not be relevant, and we need to identify the difference between what is good and what is not good or what is wrong. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. That was a very detailed answer you have given. And we are going for the second question, sir, which is can you please clarify more how it can be used in car manufacturing?
Okay, so again, I work in the automobile space, but I won't take any specific company examples, but something which in general that we notice. So you can classify it into domain specific use cases and domain agnostic cases, right? So domain specific cases, for example, in automotive, like I said, robotics or automation on the plant. So that is something that is being done. So designing, car designing, a lot of effort goes into designing, and Gen AI with all its capabilities in image generation, it will help a lot in that front, right? So that's a couple of examples on domain specific case. So I also mentioned domain agnostic. So it's not specific to domain. For example, marketing and sales, right? It's not specific to domain. So you need to sell or market even if you're in retail, even if you're in automotive. So in that area, again, I see a lot of Gen AI use cases like image generation, content generation, recommending new products or new cars based on the customer profile, right? So if you are selling a very high-end car, you can't target it to a student, right? So you need to know the history of that customer, and then you need to accordingly target. Similarly, the case with a middle-aged, high net worth individual, targeting him with a low-end car will not help. So just a few cases that I could think of, but these are ways in which GenAI is used to market to certain in the automotive industry.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your answer, sir. Shall we take up one final question, which is very different from all general questions? How to be aware or overcome deepfake mechanism, mainly in social engineering?
Sorry, your voice was breaking. Can you please repeat?
Yes, sir. The question is how to be aware or overcome deepfake mechanism in social engineering. That is one different question asked by the participant.
Are they referring social media or?
I think like it should be social media. It is not social engineering.
Okay. So yeah, so social media again is an area where there is scope for a lot of deep fakes to be used. So again, being careful with our data, that's something that needs to be done. Privacy. So privacy is something that's a lot in progress, even as GenAI is progressing. Companies are focusing on privacy, right? We saw a lot of examples recently where companies got into trouble with authorities because they did not handle the customer data properly. So these are some policies that we expect companies to focus on a lot going forward. And at the same time, customers also will need to be careful with the kind of data that they share, right, in public. So your profiles and other data, we need to ensure that it's not easily shared in public. With proliferation of mobile devices, social media, and several other platforms, as they grow, as GenAI grows, I think we need to be careful with how our data is shared. Yeah, that's
Yes, sir.
I think how people can be careful to avoid any problems with this.
Yes, sir. With all these ethical considerations, they can take into the particular work or job, sir. So
Yeah.
thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful, content, sir. So thank you, sir. And participants, we are closing the Q&A here because the other speaker is waiting. And